A fat girl was sold to a billionaire by her own mother to clear a mountain of debt. She thought she was being traded like property, just another deal between the powerful and the desperate. But when she arrives at his mansion, trembling and humiliated, the billionaire does something no one expects. He doesn't touch her, he doesn't demand anything. Instead, he says the words that stop her heart cold. "You're not here for my pleasure. You're here for your peace." At first, she thinks it's some kind of cruel game, until his strange kindness starts to heal the wounds her own mother left behind. But deep inside that mansion hides a heartbreaking secret, one that could shatter both of them forever. Because this billionaire isn't just saving her, he's trying to atone for something he can't forgive himself for. So when her past comes crashing back, and the truth is exposed for the world to see, will this broken girl finally believe she's worth love? Or will the price of her redemption be losing the only man who ever saw her soul? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now, and if this story speaks to you, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. The heat in Atlanta that afternoon clung to everything. The air, the ground, and the small wooden house where Naomi Carter lived with her mother. The old porch sagged under its own weight, the paint peeled away in long, curling strips, and the mailbox hung crooked, stuffed with unopened bills. Inside, Naomi sat at the kitchen table, folding laundry that smelled faintly of detergent and defeat. She heard her mother's voice outside, sharp, pleading, desperate. Two men stood near the fence. Their truck idled by the curb, engine rumbling low. Naomi couldn't make out every word, but she caught enough to make her chest tighten. "$500,000, one of them said. "We've waited long enough." Her mother's reply came fast, angry, as if she could shout the debt away. "I told you, I'm working on it." Naomi froze mid-fold. Her mother never shouted unless she was scared. Through the screen door, she could see Laverne Carter, a once beautiful woman, now dulled by time and cheap whiskey, wringing her hands. The men looked at her like wolves who'd already decided the meal was theirs. Naomi's fingers trembled. She pressed a folded towel to her chest and whispered, "Please, Lord, not again." When Laverne came inside a few minutes later, she slammed the door behind her and leaned against it, breathing hard. Sweat had beaded along her temples, and her red lipstick smudged where she'd bitten her lip. "Who were they, Mama?" Naomi asked softly. Laverne gave a weak laugh. "Businessmen, baby. Just business." Naomi stood, her heart pounding. "Mama, I heard them. They said you owe $500,000. Laverne's eyes darted away. "It ain't as bad as it sounds." "It sounds bad," Naomi whispered. "Real bad." Her mother's voice softened, but her hands shook. "I've got it handled, all right? There's someone willing to help. A man." Naomi frowned. "What kind of help?" "The kind that clears everything," Laverne said, forcing a smile. "He's rich, kind, says he wants to make things right. He's offering enough to pay the debt and then some." Naomi didn't like the sound of that. She could see through her mother's sweet tone, the one she used when she was hiding something ugly. "What did you promise him, Mama?" Laverne turned away, opening the fridge, even though there was nothing inside but leftover soup and a half-empty milk jug. "Nothing bad. Just you. He wants to meet you." Naomi blinked. The words didn't make sense at first. "Me? What for?" Laverne closed the fridge and turned, her smile brittle. "You'll go with him for a little while, just until we're back on our feet. He said you'll be safe, treated right. It's not what you think." Naomi felt the floor tilt beneath her. "Mama," she said slowly, her throat tight. "You can't mean—" "I do mean it!" Laverne snapped, then covered her mouth, tears shining in her eyes. "Baby, I don't have a choice. They'll take the house. They'll hurt me. I can't—" please understand." Naomi's world shrank to the sound of her mother's sobs. She stood there, frozen, the towel slipping from her hand. It landed on the floor like something final. That night, Naomi packed her small suitcase. She didn't argue anymore. She just moved quietly, folding her favorite blouse, her worn Bible, and the small photo of her and her mother from happier days, before the debts, before the shouting. Her mother came to her door once. "You'll be thankful for this one day," she said, voice trembling. "He's not like other men." Naomi didn't answer. She just kept packing. The next morning, they drove in silence. The city fell away, replaced by wide green fields and polished fences. The car smelled of cheap perfume and regret. Laverne kept her sunglasses on, even inside the shade. When the mansion came into view, Naomi's stomach twisted. It was enormous, white stone walls, tall windows gleaming under the sun, a fountain shaped like an angel in the front yard. It looked less like a home and more like another world. A man waited at the door, tall, calm. His suit was simple but expensive, his posture straight, his expression unreadable. Naomi's mother stepped out first, smoothing her hair. "Mr. Holt," she said sweetly, "thank you for meeting us." He nodded once, his voice even. "Mrs. Carter." His gaze shifted to Naomi. "And this must be your daughter." Naomi swallowed hard. "Yes, sir." He studied her for a long moment, not with hunger or cruelty, but with something else. Pity? No, something quieter. "Let's talk inside," he said. The house was cool and silent. The air smelled faintly of cedar and lemon, polish. Naomi felt small among the marble floors and high ceilings. They sat in a study with walls lined with books. Her mother talked fast, about debts, promises, second chances. The man said little, only nodded occasionally. Then, finally, he opened a leather folder, signed a few papers, and handed her mother a check. Naomi stared at the pen in his hand, realizing what was happening. Her mother's fingers trembled as she took the check. "You'll take good care of her, won't you?" He met Naomi's eyes. "Yes," he said softly, "I will." And just like that, it was done. Laverne stood, voice shaking. "You'll be all right, baby. You'll see." Naomi wanted to scream, to ask how could you, but the words stuck in her throat. She could only watch her mother walk out the door, climb into the car, and drive away. When the sound of the engine faded, silence filled the room. Naomi turned to the man, her chest aching. "So, what now?" He closed the folder, stood, and gestured towards the hallway. "Now," he said, "you settle in." Naomi followed him up the stairs, her heart hammering in her ears. Every step felt heavier than the last. He stopped in front of a door and opened it. "This will be your room," he said. Inside was a bed with white sheets, sunlight spilling across the floor, and a vase of fresh flowers on the table. Not what she expected. "I don't understand," she whispered. "What do you want from me?" He looked at her quietly. Then he said the words that would haunt her for nights to come. "You're not here for my pleasure, Naomi. You're here for your peace." Naomi blinked, unsure if she heard right. "My peace?" "Yes," he said simply. "You'll stay here for a year. You'll cook, help with my charity. When it's over, the debt will be gone and you'll be free." Naomi's lips trembled. "That's it?" He nodded. "That's it." She wanted to believe him. She wanted to think he was telling the truth. But her mother's betrayal still burned too deep. That night, she sat on the edge of the soft bed, staring at her small suitcase. The mansion was silent, except for the ticking of a distant clock. She whispered into the stillness, "You're not property." Then, quietly, she added, "You're still Naomi." She lay down, listening to the wind outside, and for the first time in years she prayed, not for her mother, not for rescue, but for strength. And in a study downstairs, Matthew Holt stood by the window, watching the stars, his own prayer rising like smoke. He didn't know why he'd done this, only that the guilt inside him had grown too heavy to bear alone. As the house fell asleep, two broken souls under one roof began a year that would change them both forever. Morning sunlight spilled through the long curtains like golden water, drawing soft lines across Naomi's face. She blinked awake, unsure for a moment where she was. Then it came rushing back. The mansion, the deal, the man downstairs who said she was here for her peace. Her chest tightened. Peace. What did that even mean? The room around her was silent except for the soft ticking of a clock. Everything was too clean, too perfect. The silk sheets, the pale blue walls, the fresh flowers that still held dew on their petals. She felt like an uninvited guest in someone else's dream. Naomi dressed quietly, wearing the same jeans and plain shirt she had brought from home. She took one last look at her reflection in the mirror, round face, tired eyes, curly hair pinned up, and whispered, "You can do this. Just 1 year." When she opened her door, the hallway stretched long and empty. The floors gleamed like glass. At the end, she could see sunlight glowing from another room. She followed it, heart thudding. The kitchen was large enough to fit her whole house inside. A soft hum of a refrigerator filled the air, and polished pots hung from a rack above the counter. She ran her fingers across the marble surface and thought, "No one's ever had me touch something this fancy without asking me to clean it first." A deep voice startled her. "Good morning." She turned quickly. It was him, the billionaire. He stood near the doorway, sleeves rolled up, hair slightly tousled. He didn't look like the kind of man who barked orders, more like someone used to carrying quiet weight. "Morning," she said, her voice unsure. "I didn't mean to startle you." "It's all right." She looked down at her hands. "I was just trying to figure out where things are. You cook?" She nodded slowly. "Some. Not like a chef or anything, but I can make a decent meal." His gaze softened. "Good. The kitchen's yours, then. You can prepare meals when you like. There's no schedule here." Naomi frowned a little. "No schedule? No rules?" He paused. "Just one. Be honest." She blinked at him, caught off guard. "Honest about what?" "Everything," he said simply. "If you're sad, say it. If you're angry, say it. If you want to leave, say it." Naomi didn't know how to answer that. In her world, honesty often made things worse. He walked over to a small notepad on the counter and wrote something quickly, then tore off the page. "There's the address and phone number for my assistant. If you ever need anything, or if you decide this isn't working, call her. You're not trapped here." She took the note slowly, feeling the oddness of the moment. Not trapped. It was the first time anyone had said that to her. As he turned to leave, she asked quietly, "Why did you do this?" He stopped but didn't look back. "Because I know what it feels like to be bought." Then he was gone. The rest of the morning passed in uneasy silence. Naomi found the pantry stocked with every spice, grain, and fruit she could imagine. Cooking gave her something to hold on to, so she chopped onions, hummed softly, and filled the air with warmth. She made stew, simple, thick, and heavy with garlic. When she brought it out to the dining room, he was already seated. He looked up from a file and smiled faintly. "It smells good." Naomi set the bowl down, her hands shaking slightly. "It's not fancy." "I didn't ask for fancy," he said. She sat across from him, unsure if she should eat too. He noticed and gestured for her to sit. "Please, you cooked it. You should share it." She hesitated, then sat down. They ate in silence, the only sound the soft clink of spoons against bowls. After a while he said quietly, "You're a good cook." Naomi laughed nervously. "You're being kind. It's too salty." "It's honest," he replied, and there was something in his tone, gentle but firm, that made her look up. For a moment she saw something behind his calm expression. Sadness, maybe, or guilt. After lunch, she explored the house a little. Each room was spotless but empty in a strange way. The furniture looked untouched, the air too still. Even the photos on the walls were just landscapes, no people, no smiles. In the evening, Naomi stepped out to the back garden. The sun hung low, painting the sky in gold and pink. She found a bench near a small pond and sat there, hugging her knees. For the first time since she'd arrived, she let herself cry. Not loud, just soft tears that rolled quietly down her cheeks. When she finally stood and turned to go back inside, she noticed him standing by the doorway, watching her. He didn't say anything. He only gave her a small nod before walking away. That night, Naomi sat in her room again. On her nightstand, she noticed a folded piece of paper she hadn't seen before. Her name was written neatly across it. She opened it. "The kitchen is yours. The rest will come in time." There was no signature, but she knew it was him. She smiled faintly, then set the note beside her Bible. Lying down, she whispered, "Lord, I don't know what's happening here, but maybe, just maybe, this isn't punishment." Downstairs, the mansion grew quiet. In his study, the man worked late, but every now and then his eyes drifted toward the kitchen window, where light still glowed from Naomi's room. He told himself he had done the right thing, given her safety, a roof, a chance. But part of him knew it wasn't just kindness driving him. It was something heavier, something that felt like penance. When the clock struck midnight, he closed his file and stared at a photo frame on his desk, one that faced down. His jaw tightened, and he whispered to the empty room, "Maybe this time I'll get it right." Dawn came soft and grey the next day, and the house met it with quiet. Naomi woke before her alarm because the silence felt like a tap on the shoulder. She sat up, stretched, and listened to the far-off hum of the refrigerator, the faint tick of the hallway clock, and the weak bird song outside. Her chest felt lighter than it had the night before. Not light, but lighter. She brushed her teeth, tied her curls back with a worn ribbon, and went straight to the kitchen. The marble counter was cool under her palms. She opened the tall pantry and smiled without meaning to. There were jars of oats and rice lined up like a little army, sacks of flour, rows of spices in neat glass tubes. The order calmed her. She set a pot on the stove and made oatmeal with milk, a little cinnamon, and sliced pears she found in a wooden bowl. On a tray she added 2 bowls, 2 spoons, and a small plate of toasted nuts. She almost took the tray to the dining room, but paused. He had not asked for breakfast. He had not told her to serve him. He had told her to be honest. "All right," she said under her breath, and fixed one bowl to keep and one to give. She found him in the study with the door ajar. He sat at the desk, sleeves rolled, face bent over papers. The room smelled of paper, cedar, and a hint of lemon oil. He looked up when she tapped. "I made breakfast," she said. "Oatmeal, it's simple." He stood, as if old manners had tugged him up by the shoulders. "Thank you," he said. "Will you eat with me?" "Yes," she said, and surprised herself by how sure it sounded. They ate on the small sofa near the window, where light fell in a wide sheet. He didn't make small talk, which she liked. He only asked, "Do you need anything for the kitchen?" And, "Would you like a key to the garden shed? There's a grill there." She nodded to both. "I'll make a list later." And then, because he had asked for honesty, she added, "Thank you for eating what I cook. It helps me feel useful." His face softened. You are not here to earn your right to breathe, he said. But I'm glad you're in the kitchen. The house has felt empty for a long time. The bowl felt warm in her hands. She looked down, and a small smile tugged at her mouth. They fell into a rhythm that first week. It wasn't a plan they spoke. It was more like a path they found by walking it. On Monday, she learned he took his coffee black, and only after 9. He left early for meetings and returned before sunset. He ate dinner, read for an hour, and then walked the East Garden alone. He liked the roses there, but never cut them. He paid attention to small things, like a man who had learned to keep his hands gentle. On Tuesday, Naomi tested the oven with cornbread and collard greens. The smell filled the halls, and for the first time, she opened the windows so the house could breathe. She hummed a choir song she hadn't sung in years. She didn't know all the words anymore, but the tune remembered her. He came to the doorway at the last verse, leaning one shoulder to the frame. "That song," he said softly. "My mother played it once on a borrowed piano. I was 7. I remember the sound more than the words." Naomi used the edge of her apron to lift the skillet. "Food's almost ready," she said, and something in her voice was bright. On Wednesday, she found him in the garden at noon, earbuds in, head bowed. The earbuds bled a fragile halo of sound, soft gospel, low and warm. He didn't see her at first. He stood near a fence post that leaned a little. One hand rested on it as if holding it up. She lingered a step back, not wanting to break whatever moment he had. When he looked up and saw her, he pulled the buds free. "I was just making sure the grounds crew fixes this," he said, tapping the post. "We've had storms." "It looks tired," she said. "We all do," he replied, and his smile was small but real. That afternoon, Naomi took a break in her room and called her mother. She did not plan to. Her thumb did it before her head could stop it. Laverne answered on the 4th ring. "Naomi!" Her voice was too bright. "My baby, how is it? Are you safe? Is he kind?" Naomi sat on the edge of the bed. "I'm safe," she said. "I'm cooking. I have a room." "Oh, good," Laverne said, and then her tone slid sideways into a thin whine. "Listen, I wouldn't ask, but things are tight right now. Your uncle needed—" "Mama," Naomi kept her voice flat. "You took a check for $500,000. Well now," Laverne said, laughter breaking on the edge like a dirty bottle. "There were fees, and those men don't—" "No," Naomi said. "We're not doing this." The line went quiet. Naomi stared across the room at the small flower vase on her dresser. The petals had begun to curl at the tips. "You raised me to tell the truth," Naomi said softly. "Here's mine. I feel used. I feel ashamed. I feel like you sold me and called it love. I will not send you money. Not today. Not next week. Not until I understand who I am without buying your peace." Silence. Then a sharp breath, like a slap drawn back. "You ungrateful girl," Laverne hissed. "Who fed you all those years? Who kept a roof?" "You gambled the roof away," Naomi said, and for the first time in her life, she did not apologize for speaking. "I'll pray for you, but I won't be your answer anymore." She tapped the red button with a hand that shook, and then placed the phone face down, as if it might bite. She did not cry right away. She stood, set the phone in the drawer, and went back to the kitchen. Her hands knew what to do before her feelings caught up. She shelled beans, rinsed rice, chopped onions, so even the knife felt steady. Only when the pot simmered did her face break. Tears fell into the steam like extra salt. She wiped them away with her wrist and let the meal lift a warm wall between her and the raw ache in her chest. That evening, clouds gathered, and rain came down like a string curtain, thin and steady. She put dinner on the table, roasted chicken with lemon, green beans slick with butter, rice fluffed with a fork. He came in with his hair damp from the garden and sat across from her. "Thank you," he said, as he always did. They ate. The rain played the windows. When she had taken her last bite, Naomi folded her napkin and said, "May I ask you something?" "Yes. You told me once you knew what it felt like to be bought." He pressed his napkin to his mouth and set it down. For a heartbeat, he looked older. Then he nodded to the study. "Come sit by the fire." He did not light the fire often. Tonight he did, as if his answer needed a place to land. He set 2 logs that caught quickly. Flames leaned together like people sharing a secret. They sat in chairs angled towards the hearth. His elbows rested on his knees, hands laced. He stared into the heat as if it might speak first. "I was small," he said. 6 when my father left, 8 when my mother did too. Foster homes after that. Some good, some not. There was a man who liked the idea of owning a boy. Not in the way you fear. He did not touch me. But he did buy me in every other sense. I did chores until past midnight, earned money I never saw, ate only when I'd done enough to deserve it. He'd say, "You belong to me until I say you don't." I believed him for a long time. Naomi listened, palms flat on her thighs, breath slow. The fire popped, soft as a knuckle. "I learned silence in that house," he went on. "I learned neat corners and yes, sir, and how to make myself a ghost. Later, when I had money of my own, I learned how easy it is to hide inside it. Mansions make very fine caves." He smiled without joy. "When your mother called," he said, "I heard a wound I knew too well, a bargain named love, a debt called family, and I thought, maybe I could end that sound for someone." Naomi's eyes stung. She blinked the heat away. "That man," she whispered. "Did anyone ever stop him?" "Yes," he said. "Me. I ran. I was 14. I took a bus to the edge of the city and slept under a church awning. A janitor found me and took me to a shelter. They gave me a cot and a bowl of soup and a list of rules that did not hurt. At dawn, a woman folded a blanket over my shoulders. I had not been covered by anything but work in years. I cried for an hour and then got up to wash dishes. I've been getting up to wash dishes since." The firelight found the lines around his mouth and made them gentler. "I'm sorry," Naomi said. The words felt thin. She wanted something wider, but her heart was small with the newness of it all. He shook his head. "I survived. It was not a noble story. It was a series of tiny ones. Soup, cot, dishes, work. Someone who said, 'You can stay,' and meant it without a price. That is what I want this house to be for you, Naomi. A stay without a price." Tears slid down her face, and she let them. She did not hide. She did not twist away. She kept her eyes on the flame until her vision swam and cleared again. "Thank you for telling me," she said. "Thank you for asking." He replied, "It is easier to talk to a person who looks at you like you're not a problem to solve." A small laugh broke from her then. "You eat like a man with manners and talk like one without armor," she said. "I don't know what to do with that." "Take your time," he said. "The house is not going anywhere." They let the silence fill back in. It was a good silence, like a blanket shared. After a while, Naomi stood. "I should clean the kitchen." "I'll help," he said. He meant it. He stacked plates. He rinsed them. He dried the counter with slow, exact strokes, as if each circle pulled a little of the day's weight into the cloth. She washed the skillet with a soft brush and did not let him see the way her hands shook in the warm water. When every surface shone, they stepped back and admired the small order they'd made. He walked her to the bottom of the stairs. Neither of them said the word good night. It felt too thin for what the evening had been. Naomi slept with the window cracked. Rain pattered long into the dark, and the house breathed with it. On Thursday, she woke with grit in her mouth from dreams that ran too hard. She rolled that feeling around until it dissolved in the shower and let the hot water carry it away. Downstairs, she folded a towel over her shoulder and set a goal: bake bread. She had baked once or twice before, but in this kitchen, with the good yeast and the big mixing bowl, it felt like a vow. She measured flour and salt, warmed milk, scattered yeast like tiny promises. Her fingers kneaded the dough steady and sure. Push, fold, turn. She worked until the dough felt alive. While it rose, she sliced peaches for a compote and set them to soften with lemon and a scant spoon of sugar. The doorbell chimed then, a mellow, two-toned sound. She stiffened. People did not ring this doorbell, she thought. People arrived by gate and text. She wiped her hands and poked her head into the foyer. A man in a navy cap stood under the awning holding a small box and a bouquet of roses, deep red, heavy-headed. "Delivery for Mr. Holt," he said. She signed. When he left, the foyer fell quiet again. Naomi carried the box and the roses to the study and set them on the desk. She did not peek. She arranged the flowers in water because they were living things and needed it. The bread rose high. She pressed a finger into the soft dome and watched it spring back. When the oven timer finally rang, she slid 2 golden loaves onto a rack. The smell pulled her whole childhood up from wherever it had been hiding. She took a slice while it was still too warm and burned her fingers happily. At noon, he came in from the garden with dirt at his cuff. He stopped dead in the kitchen doorway and breathed out slow. "Bread," he said, as if the word itself might heal him. She smiled and handed him a slice. He bit, closed his eyes, and did not pretend it was anything less than holy. They ate sandwiches with the heel of 1 loaf, peaches, spooned over yogurt for dessert. He noticed the roses in the next room and nodded. "Thank you," he said. "They're for the foundation office. A donor sends them every month in memory of someone." "Someone she lost?" Naomi asked. "Someone he lost," he said, and then his voice thinned a little. "His wife." She let the subject pass like a slow car you don't want to race. That afternoon she made a list for the kitchen. Things they had, things they needed, things she could try. She put the list on the fridge with a magnet shaped like a pear and did not realize she had begun to claim the space until the magnet clicked. Near dusk, while she wiped the last crumbs from the cutting board, the phone in her apron buzzed. For a second she thought it might be her mother and almost let it ring into the quiet. But the screen showed an unknown number. It could have been the foundation. It could have been the store about an order. She swiped. "Naomi Carter?" a brisk voice asked. "This is Eleanor Briggs. I manage Mr. Holt's foundation operations. I wanted to welcome you and set expectations." Naomi searched the drawer for a pen. "Hello?" she said. "Nice to meet you." "Our gala is in 2 weeks," Eleanor said. "We keep a calendar of volunteer hours and kitchen needs. If you're assisting with meals for board meetings, we'll need menus 48 hours ahead. Can you email me a list of your allergies, preferences, anything like that?" "Yes," Naomi said. "I don't have allergies. I mean, none I know." "Excellent. We'll send over logins for the inventory app and the event portal." The call ended with a promise of emails. Naomi set the phone down, feeling taller. A job, she thought. Not just a role. Real tasks. A place to belong that wasn't only the space someone else had bought. That night the rain had moved on, leaving the air washed and cool. They ate on the terrace. Slices of bread, a platter of tomatoes with oil, grilled chicken, a bowl of olives. Lights along the patio glowed soft. Crickets tuned up in the hedges. He asked how her call with the foundation went. She told him about Eleanor's voice, neat and quick, and the calendar that sounded like an army. He chuckled and said, "She keeps time like a general and mercy like a nurse. You'll like her once she stops testing you." "She's testing me?" Naomi asked, half pleased, half uneasy. "She tests everyone," he said. "It's her way of making sure what we build stands." After dinner, they carried plates to the sink together. The closeness felt easy for the first time. No tug, no sharp edge. When they parted at the stairs, she said, "Good night," and did not swallow the words. Friday rose clear. Naomi woke before the sun and knew exactly what she wanted to do. She dressed quietly, pulled on socks, and headed for the kitchen where the floor still held the night's cool. She wasn't hungry yet. She wasn't ready to talk. But she wanted to give something that said what her mouth could not say without breaking. She sifted flour again, cut cold butter into it with careful strokes, and folded buttermilk into the mix until it came together in a shaggy ball. Biscuit dough. Quick, humble, kind. She floured the counter and patted the dough into a circle, then pressed a glass into it for rounds. She set each pale circle on a tray like a row of moons and brushed their tops with milk. While the biscuits baked, she warmed honey and butter together until they married. By the time the house had fully woken, a smell like home drifted through the halls. She wrapped 6 biscuits in a clean towel, tucked a small jar of honey butter beside them, and carried the bundle down the corridor. She paused outside the study door and listened. Paper turned. A chair creaked. A sigh. Tired, not sad. Naomi set the bundle at the threshold, knocked once, and stepped back far enough that he would not feel watched. She did not leave a note. She had no words better than the warm ones wrapped in cloth. From where she stood, she saw the door open, just a hand's width, and his hand reached down. He paused when he lifted the bundle, as if he could feel the care with his fingertips. Then his voice came, low and sure, threaded with something gentle. "Thank you." Naomi didn't answer. She only smiled at the air and walked toward the kitchen where another tray of biscuits waited. She had learned, in one short week, that peace did not arrive like a parade. It arrived like this, small, warm, and shared. Behind her, in the study, he sat at the desk with the towel folded in his lap and ate a biscuit with his eyes closed. The honey butter ran down his thumb. He caught it with a laugh that sounded surprised to be alive. Both of them, in their own rooms, felt the same quiet thought rise and settle. This might be the beginning of healing, and the day moved forward on that hope, step by step, like a heart learning its true beat. Saturday morning broke cool and blue. A soft wind pressed against the wide windows of the mansion, whispering through the open cracks. Naomi woke early again, long before the alarm she had stopped setting. She dressed in a simple lavender shirt and jeans and walked barefoot through the quiet hallway. The house, once intimidating, now greeted her like a silent friend. She had decided that mornings would be hers. Her time, before the weight of the day had a chance to settle. Downstairs, she brewed coffee and poured it into a mug big enough to warm both hands. The smell curled through the kitchen like comfort itself. As she sipped, she thought about the week, the way her mother's voice had broken over the phone, the strange steadiness of her life here, and how the man upstairs kept his pain tucked behind polite smiles. She looked toward the hallway leading to the study. He was in there most mornings, reading or answering calls in that calm, deep tone that always sounded a little lonely. She hesitated. Should she bring him coffee? No, maybe not yet. Some boundaries were best kept until she understood the shape of them. Instead, she grabbed a rag and decided to tidy the library. It was a way to stay useful and quiet. The library was a world of its own. Sunlight slanted through tall windows, catching dust motes in mid-air. Hundreds of books lined the shelves, their spines worn from use. Some were old classics, others were about architecture, charity, psychology, pieces of the man who owned them. As she wiped the wooden tables, something behind a stack of books caught her eye, a thin silver frame half hidden in the corner of the shelf. She pulled it out carefully. Inside was a photo of a woman. Her smile was soft, eyes bright, and there was something about her, an ease, a warmth that drew Naomi in. The woman wasn't thin, but radiant, full-bodied, glowing, unafraid of being seen. Naomi's heart gave a strange twist. She set the frame down gently and looked closer. The background showed a garden, the same one behind the mansion, though greener, livelier. Before she could think, a voice came from the doorway. "What are you doing?" She jumped, nearly dropping the frame. He stood there, expression unreadable, a faint tension in his jaw. I was cleaning," she stammered. "I found this. I didn't mean to—" He crossed the room, took the frame carefully from her hands, and placed it face down on the table. "It's fine," he said quietly, though his voice held something tight beneath the calm. Naomi swallowed. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have touched it." He shook his head, staring at the frame. "You didn't do anything wrong." The silence between them stretched long and fragile. Finally, he spoke again, softer this time. Her name was Clara. Naomi waited. "My fiancée," he said. "She died 5 years ago." Naomi's heart sank. "I'm sorry." He nodded once, as if accepting something inevitable. She struggled, with herself, with the world's opinions. She hated her reflection. The press called her names when we got engaged. Too big for him. Not his type. It ate her alive, little by little. I tried to help, but I failed. His voice broke slightly on that last word. Naomi didn't move, afraid to make it worse. "She took her life in this house," he finished, his eyes distant. "In the garden, near the roses." Naomi's throat tightened. She wanted to say something kind, something to patch the wound in his tone, but no words felt right. Instead, she whispered, "You couldn't have saved her alone." He looked at her then. Really looked. For the first time, the cold steadiness in his gaze cracked, and behind it she saw guilt, deep and raw. "Maybe not," he said, "but I should have tried harder to love her past her pain." Naomi stepped closer, her voice low but sure. "Love isn't proof. It's presence. You were there. That counts." He blinked, the faintest hint of surprise crossing his face. Then, as if the air had grown too heavy, he turned and left the room without another word. The rest of the day passed quietly. Naomi couldn't stop thinking about the photo. About Clara. This woman she'd never met but somehow understood. She went back to the kitchen, cooked a simple meal, chicken stew with carrots and potatoes, and tried to lose herself in the rhythm of chopping and stirring. But even as the scent of simmering broth filled the air, she felt the weight of Clara's story pressing against her heart. When he didn't come down for dinner, Naomi set a bowl aside for him anyway. She left it on the counter, covered with a plate to keep it warm. Later, when she walked past the study, she noticed the lights still on. She hesitated by the doorway. Inside, he sat at his desk. Head bowed, the silver frame beside him. This time turned upright again. Naomi stood there for a heartbeat, then walked back to her room. That night, she couldn't sleep. Her mind kept circling the same thought. He wasn't saving her. He's trying to save himself. She sat at her small writing desk, the one beside the window, and pulled out her notebook. The words came slowly at first, then like rain. The body they sold. They said worth was weight, and mine was too much. They said love was light, and mine cast too wide a shadow. But maybe God hides his strongest souls in bodies big enough to carry more than their share of grace. And if the world sells you cheap, Remember, he already bought you full price." She read it over, heart thudding, then tore the page out carefully and walked down the hallway. At the door to his study, she slid the folded paper under the frame and left it there. When she came down the next morning, the page was gone. On the kitchen counter sat a cup of coffee, still warm, and a small note beside it. It read, "Clara would have loved your words. Thank you." Naomi pressed a hand to her chest. She didn't know if she was smiling or crying. Maybe both. The day moved forward softly after that. They didn't talk about Clara again, but something between them had shifted. Something fragile, like ice beginning to thaw. He still worked late, still walked the garden in silence. But now, when he passed Naomi in the hallway, he nodded, sometimes even smiled. And she in turn found herself humming again while she cooked, not just to fill the silence, but because she could. That evening, as the sunset painted the sky in gold, Naomi stood by the window of her room. The wind rustled through the trees outside, whispering against the glass. For a long moment, she imagined Clara there, standing among the roses, smiling again, finally at peace. Naomi closed her eyes and whispered into the fading light, "Rest easy. I'll take it from here." The house sighed in reply, as if grateful, and somewhere deep within its walls, healing began. Quietly, like roots pushing through the dark soil toward the sun. The week began with the low hum of summer heat. Cicadas sang through the windows, and the air shimmered over the wide lawns of the mansion. Naomi stood by the sink, rinsing dishes, sleeves rolled up, humming softly to herself. The house had settled into a rhythm, quiet but steady. Every morning she cooked, every afternoon she read in the garden or organized kitchen shelves. Every evening she and the man shared dinner in companionable silence that didn't need fixing. It had been 3 weeks since she arrived. The shock of that first day had dulled, but not vanished. Sometimes, when she caught her reflection, a small voice still whispered, "You're the girl who was sold." Yet another, newer voice would answer, "You're more than that." The mansion was big enough to swallow time. Days slid together like smooth stones in a stream. But this morning, something in the air felt different. When she brought breakfast to the dining room, she found him already there, leaning against the table, reading a newspaper. His brow was furrowed, jaw set. "Morning," she greeted softly. He looked up, nodded, but didn't smile. "Morning." She placed his plate down and noticed his hands, tight around the newspaper, knuckles pale. "Something wrong?" He folded the paper, setting it aside. "The charity board's been pressuring me. They want me to sell one of our shelters to a corporate buyer." Naomi frowned. "But those shelters help people." "I know." His voice was low. "But they think it's too expensive to maintain. They don't understand what it means to have a safe place to start over." She hesitated. "Then tell them no." He gave a humorless chuckle. If only it were that easy. For the rest of the meal, the air between them hung heavy with unspoken thoughts. That afternoon, Naomi decided to clean the sitting room near the front door. It had a piano she'd never seen him touch. Dust rested thick across its surface. She wiped it down, humming the tune that had followed her all morning. Halfway through, the doorbell rang. She froze. Hardly anyone came unannounced. When she opened the door, the sunlight nearly blinded her, and then her heart dropped. "Mama!" Laverne Carter stood there in a wrinkled dress and cheap heels, her lipstick smeared, eyes glassy. "Baby!" she cried, stepping forward with arms wide. "Oh, thank God, look at you, living good!" Naomi's breath hitched. "What are you doing here?" "I came to see my girl," Laverne said quickly, her voice sugar and panic mixed together. "And maybe talk to Mr. Holt. He's such a fine man, Naomi. He helped us once. Maybe he can—" "No," Naomi said sharply, blocking the doorway. "Mama, you need to go." Laverne blinked, her face shifting from sweetness to something hard. "Go? I'm your mother. Don't you talk to me like that." Inside, footsteps echoed down the hall. He appeared, calm but alert. "Is everything all right?" Naomi turned to him, voice trembling. "This is my mother." Laverne's expression changed instantly. "Mr. Holt," she said, voice dripping charm. "It's such a blessing to meet you again. I just wanted to thank you, Mrs. Carter." He interrupted, tone polite but firm. "Now isn't a good time." Laverne's smile faltered. "I just need a little more help, that's all. Some money for medicine, maybe a place to stay." Naomi's stomach dropped. "Mama, stop. Don't you hush me!" Laverne snapped, turning on her daughter. "You owe me. After all I did for you." Naomi's breath shook. "You sold me." The words echoed like a slap. Even the cicadas seemed to pause outside. Laverne's face went pale, then twisted in anger. "I did what I had to do. You think I liked it? You were always so soft, so easy to give up. You never had the guts to fight for anything." "Enough," he said, voice low but commanding. "Mrs. Carter, I'll have my staff take you wherever you need to go, but you can't stay here." Laverne's chin trembled. "So that's it, huh? My own daughter throwing me out for a stranger?" Naomi whispered, "You threw me out first." For a second, something flickered in Laverne's eyes. Shame, maybe. Then she turned away, muttering curses under her breath as security escorted her out. When the door closed, Naomi's knees nearly gave out. He stepped forward, reaching to steady her, but she pulled back. "Don't," she said, her voice shaking. "Please, I need a minute." He nodded, stepping away. "Take all the time you need." She didn't go to her room. Instead, she went outside, down the path to the garden. The roses rustled in the wind. She sank to her knees by the fountain, tears falling fast and silent. For so long she'd wanted her mother's approval, to be enough. But now, watching her mother's shadow fade down the driveway, she felt something new, grief mixed with freedom. She stayed there until the sky began to dim. When she finally went back inside, she found him waiting in the kitchen. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "You shouldn't have had to deal with that alone." Naomi's voice cracked. "She's my mother. I keep hoping she'll change, but she never does. She's drowning," he said softly. "And you can't jump in after her without losing yourself." She met his eyes, her own red from crying. "You sound like you've said that before." "I have," he admitted. "To myself." The kitchen filled with the quiet rhythm of rain starting outside. Naomi took a deep breath and reached for a towel, wiping her cheeks. "Do you still want dinner?" she asked, her voice small. "If you do." They cooked together in silence. Simple pasta, garlic and butter. The act itself was enough. No words could heal what had broken that day, but standing side by side in the warm kitchen light felt like a promise. That pain didn't have to be permanent. When they sat down to eat, he lifted his glass slightly. "To honesty," he said. Naomi hesitated, then clinked her glass against his. "And to peace," she added. For the first time that day, they both smiled. Later that night, after he'd gone to his study, Naomi sat on the terrace, watching the rain streak down the glass. She whispered, "Lord, I don't hate her. I just can't carry her anymore." The thunder rolled far off, low and soft, like agreement. Inside, he sat by the fire, thinking of the woman who had walked out his door, Laverne Carter, and of the daughter she had left behind. He thought of the trembling in Naomi's voice when she said, "You sold me." He poured himself a glass of water, not whiskey, and whispered to the quiet room, "Some chains aren't made of metal." That night, both of them lay awake, worlds apart, yet joined by the same fragile truth. Sometimes family wounds were deeper than any stranger could give, and only forgiveness could stop the bleeding. By morning, Naomi would rise again, her heart scarred but steadier. She didn't know it yet, but this was the turning point, the moment her past lost its power to define her. Sunday dawned clear after the storm, the world outside scrubbed clean. Dew clung to the grass, and the air smelled like wet earth and magnolia. Naomi stood barefoot by her window, watching the sunrise spill over the horizon. She had barely slept, but for the first time in years her mind wasn't buzzing with fear or shame. It was quiet. Downstairs, she found the kitchen just as she had left it, neat, waiting, forgiving. She set water to boil, sliced a few peaches, and whisked pancake batter until it was smooth. When he came in, hair slightly mussed from sleep, she almost laughed. He looked more human that morning, less like the calm billionaire she'd imagined, more like someone still learning how to rest. "Morning?" he said. "Morning," she echoed, flipping the first pancake. "I made breakfast. Thought we could start the week off right." He smiled faintly. "That smells like mercy." She glanced at him over her shoulder. "Then I must have done it right." They ate together by the kitchen window, the light soft around them. The quiet wasn't awkward anymore. It was easy, gentle, like a shared prayer. After breakfast, Naomi went out to the garden. The air was warm but mild, and the sky a perfect blue. She found him near the fence, a hammer in hand, fixing a crooked post. "You fix things yourself?" she asked, surprised. "When I can," he replied without looking up. "Some things are better mended with your own hands." Naomi picked up a second hammer resting by the fence. "Show me." He chuckled softly. "You sure you want to help with this?" "Why not?" she said. "It can't be harder than baking bread." He handed her a few nails and guided her through the motions. The rhythm of hammering felt oddly satisfying. They worked side by side for an hour, sharing light conversation. Weather, books, the birds nesting near the oak. It was ordinary, but somehow sacred. When the last nail was set, she leaned against the fence, wiping sweat from her forehead. "Not bad for city hands," he said, nodding at her work. Naomi grinned. "And not bad for a billionaire." He laughed, a full, genuine sound that startled even him. The laughter lingered between them like sunlight. That evening, Naomi cooked stew again, her favorite kind, thick and full of flavor. When she brought it out, he lit a small fire in the living room hearth. The glow flickered across the walls, softening the mansion's cold edges. They sat on the rug with bowls in their hands, the fire crackling. "I've been thinking," he said quietly, "about what you told your mother." Naomi's eyes lowered. "That wasn't my proudest moment." "I disagree," he said. "You told her the truth. That takes courage." She stared into the fire, watching sparks rise. It felt like betrayal. He shook his head. "Sometimes truth looks like betrayal to the ones who built their comfort on your silence." Her throat tightened. "You talk like a preacher." He smiled. "No, just a man who's lost enough to know better now." For a while neither spoke. The fire popped and hissed. Outside the night deepened. Then he said, "I saw you writing the other day. Do you write often?" "Since I was a kid," Naomi said. "When things got bad at home, I wrote about places I'd never seen. It was the only way I could breathe." "What do you write now?" "Mostly prayers disguised as poems." He nodded, looking into the flames. You should share them. Naomi shook her head. No one wants to read a fat girl's prayers. He turned to her, voice firm but gentle. You're wrong. People crave truth, and you carry it. It's in your eyes when you talk, in your voice when you cook, in the way you look at the world like you still believe it can heal. Naomi blinked back tears. You really think that? He smiled faintly. I don't think. I see. The room went still. The only sound was the fire breathing between them. Over the next few days, their rhythm shifted again. He began inviting her along to the charity's local events, soup kitchens, food drives, women's shelters. Naomi was hesitant at first, but he encouraged her gently. You have more to give than you realize, he said. The first day she volunteered at the shelter, she was nervous. But when the women there, young, old, broken, brave, smiled and thanked her for the meals, something inside her clicked. She understood them. She was them once. Each visit she shared little bits of her story. Not all the details, just enough to make them feel seen. You're not what was done to you, she told one trembling woman. You're what you do next. The woman's eyes filled with tears, and Naomi realized her words were more powerful than she knew. One afternoon, after a long day at the shelter, Naomi found him in the garden again. He was kneeling by a patch of soil, planting roses. You work too hard, she teased. He smiled. These keep me sane. She crouched beside him, brushing dirt from her hands. Why roses? They bloom from thorns, he said simply. And they teach patience. Naomi pressed a finger into the soft soil beside his. Maybe that's why God made us too. He looked at her, the corner of his mouth lifting. Maybe so. The sun dipped low, painting the sky with streaks of orange and rose. For the first time in years, Naomi felt the ache in her chest ease, not disappear, but loosen its hold. That night, she stood by her window, journal open in her lap. She wrote about the women at the shelter, about laughter over shared meals, about dirt under her fingernails and the smell of firewood. Her pen paused before the last line. She looked toward the faint light spilling from his study window across the lawn. She wrote, Healing isn't loud. It happens when someone believes in your goodness long enough for you to see it too. Then she closed the book and whispered a prayer of thanks. Downstairs, he sat at his desk, the silver photo of Clara beside him. His eyes lingered on it, then drifted to the memory of Naomi's smile that afternoon. He whispered to the photo, She's helping me find what I lost, Clara, the part that still believes in light. He set the frame down gently, turned off the lamp, and for the first time in years, went to bed before midnight. In the quiet of that night, the mansion no longer felt haunted. It felt alive. Two souls, once broken in different ways, were slowly teaching each other what wholeness looked like. Patiently, tenderly, one small act of grace at a time. And as the last embers in the fireplace dimmed, the warmth between them lingered, soft and steady, proof that sometimes the surest way to heal was to simply share the fire. The morning sun poured into the kitchen like a slow river of gold. Naomi stood at the counter, folding napkins into small triangles for the week's events at the foundation. She had started helping with charity dinners and meetings, and the house no longer felt like a stranger's domain. It had become a rhythm she could hum to. He came in wearing a crisp grey suit, his tie loose around his neck. The board confirmed the date, he said. The annual gala is in 5 days. Naomi looked up, curious. The big fundraiser you mentioned? Yes. He poured himself coffee. It's where we gather donors and tell them what their money has built. Shelters, scholarships, rehab centers, it matters. She nodded, smiling. I can help with the food if you want. He hesitated. I'd rather you come as a guest. Naomi blinked. A guest? He nodded. You've worked as hard as anyone. The team knows. You. It's time they meet the heart behind some of these new projects. Her stomach fluttered. But I'm not, that kind of person. He met her gaze steadily. You're exactly that kind of person. The next few days moved in a blur of preparation. Naomi helped plan menus, checked centerpieces, and packed donation cards into envelopes. Eleanor Briggs, the sharp, precise charity director, visited twice to coordinate logistics. She eyed Naomi with polite curiosity. So you're the one who revived the meal programs? Eleanor said on her second visit. Naomi smiled shyly. Just helping where I can. Eleanor gave a tight smile. Mr. Holt speaks highly of you. The words were kind, but the tone wasn't. Naomi didn't take it personally. People like Eleanor probably had to guard their worlds carefully. By the third day, the mansion buzzed with quiet purpose. Florists came and went. Workers set up lights on the terrace. Naomi baked loaves of bread as thank-you gifts for the volunteers, the scent filling the air like warmth itself. That evening, he stopped by the kitchen and leaned against the door frame. You've done a lot, he said softly. So have you, she replied. But you look like a man who hasn't slept in a week. He laughed quietly. You're not wrong. She gestured to a chair. Sit down. I'll fix you something. He didn't argue. He sat and watched her move through the kitchen, measuring, stirring, humming. She made a quick stew, rich and savory. When she placed the bowl before him, he looked at it like it was something precious. Thank you, he said. Naomi smiled. Eat before it cools. He did, and for a moment there was only silence, the kind that feels like understanding. The night of the gala arrived crisp and clear. Naomi stood before her mirror, heart racing. The emerald gown he'd chosen for her lay across her bed, a soft, flowing dress that shimmered faintly under the light. She hesitated before putting it on, fingers trembling. When she finally saw herself dressed, she gasped. The woman in the mirror didn't look like the one who came to the mansion weeks ago. Her eyes were brighter, her shoulders straighter. She still carried her curves proudly, but for once she didn't see them as shame. They looked like strength. A gentle knock came at the door. You ready? Naomi opened it to find him standing there in a black tuxedo, holding a small velvet box. You look... He paused, unable to find the word. Beautiful. Naomi blushed. That's a first. It shouldn't be, he said. Then he opened the box. Inside lay a silver bracelet, simple and elegant. It belonged to Clara. She would have wanted someone kind to wear it. Naomi hesitated. Are you sure? He nodded. It's time it saw light again. She let him fasten it around her wrist. The touch was brief but tender, electric in its simplicity. The gala was held at one of the city's grand hotels, all glass and chandeliers. The moment they entered, heads turned. Naomi's nerves sparked like tiny fires under her skin. She could feel people's eyes on her, their whispers, their curious glances at the woman on the billionaire's arm. He noticed her unease. Ignore them, he murmured. They don't see what I do. Naomi smiled faintly. And what do you see? Someone who reminds people what grace looks like. Her breath caught. She didn't answer. They mingled with donors, politicians, and volunteers. Naomi met the women who ran the shelters, heard their stories, and even shared a few of her own. She spoke simply, but her honesty drew people in. When the foundation director took the stage to speak, she called for quiet. Before we begin tonight's pledges, there's someone here who represents the very heart of what we do. Naomi, would you join us? Naomi froze. He turned to her and smiled encouragingly. Go on. Her legs felt like air as she climbed the steps to the stage. The bright lights made her blink. The crowd stared, waiting. She took a deep breath. "I'm not used to talking in front of people like this," she began, her voice shaking. "But I know what it feels like to be lost, to think your life has no worth, and I know what it means when someone believes in you anyway." The room went still. She went on, each word steadier than the last. "Sometimes people think money saves lives, but it's not money, it's mercy, it's kindness. It's someone saying, 'You can start again.' I know, because someone said that to me." Her eyes found him across the room. "And because of that, I want to say thank you to everyone here who gives, to everyone who chooses hope instead of judgment. You're changing lives you'll never even meet, and one of them is mine." The crowd erupted into applause. Some stood. Naomi blinked through tears, stunned. When she stepped down from the stage, he met her halfway, eyes shining. "You were extraordinary." She shook her head. "I just spoke from my heart. That's what made it extraordinary," he said. Later that night, when the gala ended and the ballroom emptied, they stood together under the canopy of stars outside the hotel. The city lights shimmered below like a sea of tiny candles. He took her hand, tentative but certain. "You've given me something tonight," he said quietly. "What's that?" "Peace." Her chest tightened. "You gave me the same." He looked at her for a long moment. Then, almost as if asking permission, he leaned in. Their lips met, soft, hesitant, honest. The world seemed too still. For one perfect heartbeat, all the pain of their pasts fell away. When they parted, his voice trembled. "You were never a debt, Naomi. You were the redemption I prayed for." Naomi couldn't speak. She only smiled, eyes glistening. "Then let's make sure we both stay free." He laughed quietly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Deal." That night, back at the mansion, Naomi placed the silver bracelet on her nightstand and stared at it for a long while. She whispered, "Thank you, Clara," before turning out the light. For the first time in years, she fell asleep smiling. But outside, beyond the soft walls of the mansion, something darker was already stirring, a storm of secrets and betrayal that would test everything she had built. Because peace, once found, is always the first thing the world tries to take back. The next morning dawned quiet, with the mansion wrapped in the kind of stillness that feels sacred after a night of joy. Naomi woke with a smile still clinging to her lips. The silver bracelet on her wrist caught the morning light as she stretched, a delicate reminder of everything that had changed. The speech, the applause, the kiss under the stars. For once, she didn't feel like a guest in someone else's story. She felt alive in her own. Downstairs, the smell of fresh coffee drifted through the halls. She hummed as she brewed another pot, the song soft and bright. The house seemed lighter, as if it, too, had finally let out a long-held breath. But as she poured the coffee into 2 cups and reached for a tray, a sharp buzz broke the peace. Her phone, vibrating non-stop. One notification, then another, then a flood. She frowned and picked it up. The first message was from Eleanor. "Naomi, don't go online. Something's happened." Her stomach sank. She opened her browser and the world tilted. There it was. Everywhere. A headline with her photo beside his, taken at the gala, faces close, smiling. "Billionaire buys mistress to erase his guilt. Source claims woman sold to clear debts." Her throat closed. The article's tone was cruel, twisting the truth into poison. It mentioned her mother by name, quoting her drunken words. "He bought her from me to wipe his conscience clean." Naomi dropped the phone. It clattered against the tile, echoing through the kitchen. Her pulse roared in her ears. Her mother. Her own mother. He entered minutes later, phone in hand, jaw tight. The look on his face told her he'd seen it too. "Naomi," he began. "I didn't know," she said, voice trembling. "I swear I didn't know I know," he said quickly. "This isn't your fault." Tears stung her eyes. "They're calling me. What are they calling me?" He set his phone down and reached for her hand. "Listen to me. None of what they wrote changes who you are." But she pulled back, shaking her head. "It changes everything. You'll lose your donors, your company, everything you've built because of me." "That doesn't matter. It matters to me," she cried. "You gave me a new life, and now I've ruined yours." He stepped closer, voice low and steady. "You didn't ruin anything. You are my redemption, Naomi. Do you hear me? Not my mistake." She couldn't breathe. The words were everything she'd ever wanted to hear, but they burned now, because the world would never believe them. "Matthew," she whispered, her voice breaking. "They'll never see me as anything but your charity case." His hand fell to his side. The silence stretched like a wound. He finally said, "Then we'll show them otherwise. We'll tell the truth." "How?" Naomi asked, tears running freely now. "When the truth doesn't sell?" He opened his mouth to reply, but a knock came at the door, urgent, hard. Eleanor stepped in, face pale, phone clutched in her hand. "The board's called an emergency meeting," she said quickly. "They want you to step down until the investigation clears." Naomi went still. "Investigation?" Eleanor glanced at her, eyes full of pity. "The media claims you were paid for companionship, that the foundation funds were used for personal arrangements." Naomi's heart shattered. "That's a lie. I know," Eleanor said softly. "But they don't care." He turned to Eleanor, voice calm but tight. "Tell them I'll be there in an hour." When she left, the silence returned, sharp as glass. Naomi wiped her face with shaking hands. "I can't stay here," she said quietly. "Naomi, I can't. If I do, they'll just keep tearing you apart. I can't be the reason you lose everything good you've done." He reached for her, but she stepped back. "Please, let me do this right. For once in my life, let me walk away with my head up." His voice broke. "You walk away, and I lose the only peace I've ever known." Naomi swallowed the ache in her throat. "Then maybe it's time you find peace that doesn't depend on saving someone." He froze, hurt flashing in his eyes. But there was truth in her words, and he knew it. She packed that evening. Her suitcase was the same one she'd brought when her mother left her here, small, worn, faithful. The silver bracelet stayed on her wrist. Before she left, she wrote him a note. "You gave me more than a home. You gave me my name back. I don't know where I'll go, but I'll carry the peace you gave me wherever I land. Don't look for me. Just keep doing what you do best. Turn guilt into grace." She left it on the kitchen counter beside a folded towel and a cup of coffee. He stood by the upstairs window as she drove away. The tail lights faded into the dusk like two red tears. He wanted to run after her, to shout her name. But something held him still. Maybe love, maybe respect. Maybe the understanding that love sometimes meant letting someone leave before the world could break them again. He whispered into the empty room, "God, protect her, and forgive me for not being enough to make her stay." That night, Naomi checked into a church-run women's shelter across town. The small room was clean and quiet, a single bed and a wooden cross above it. She sat there, staring at the cracked ceiling, and whispered, "You're not property. You're not pity. You're not what they say." Her chest shook, but no tears came this time. Just resolve. Outside, rain began to fall again, tapping softly on the window pane. Somewhere across the city, A billionaire sat alone in his mansion, watching the rain, clutching the note she left behind. And though neither could see the other, both whispered the same word into the dark. Peace. The city looked different now. Bigger. Louder. But Naomi didn't mind. For the first time in her life, she walked the streets without rushing to be anywhere or to please anyone. She carried her small suitcase in one hand and a paper cup of coffee in the other, her heart somewhere between broken and free. It had been 2 weeks since she left the mansion, 2 weeks since she had driven away from the man who had bought her freedom and given her dignity back. 2 weeks since her name had been dragged through headlines and the noise of the world. The scandal had faded from the front pages now, but Naomi knew the echo of it still whispered somewhere online. People always loved stories of downfall more than stories of redemption. Still, she kept walking. When she reached the old brick building at the corner of Pine Street, the Eden House Women's Shelter, a small sigh of relief escaped her lips. The faded sign above the door leaned a little, and the paint had chipped away in patches. But to Naomi it was beautiful. It looked like something that had been broken and kept standing anyway. Just like her. Inside, the smell of soap, coffee, and oatmeal filled the air. A few women sat at folding tables in the common room, sipping from mismatched mugs. Some were quiet, others whispered in low voices about children, jobs, and lost time. Naomi smiled at them, shy but steady, then went straight to the kitchen. She had been living here for nearly a week now. Reverend Geneva Price, the shelter's director, had given her a cot, a job, and more importantly, a purpose. The Reverend was a tall woman in her 60s, with silver curls, kind eyes, and a laugh that could make fear leave a room. She had taken one look at Naomi on that first night, red-eyed, exhausted, clutching her suitcase like a lifeline, and said simply, "Child, you look like someone who's been through the fire. But fire doesn't just burn, it refines." Naomi hadn't understood what that meant then. But now, as she stirred a pot of oatmeal and added cinnamon the way the women liked, she was beginning to. Every morning at 6, Naomi woke to the faint hum of the city beyond the shelter walls. She made her bed neatly, folded the thin blanket with care, and whispered a small prayer. "Thank you, Lord. Another day." Then she went down to the kitchen and started breakfast. At first she'd been nervous. The other women came from all kinds of places, some from shelters, others from jail, a few straight from the streets. But the first time Naomi handed one of them a warm plate, the woman smiled, eyes wet. "You cook like someone who remembers what hunger feels like," she said. Naomi never forgot those words. They stayed with her. The work was hard, but it filled her heart. She cooked, cleaned, and listened to stories. And sometimes, when the women grew quiet after dinner, she shared her own. Not the whole story, just enough to let them know that they weren't alone. "I know what it's like to think you're worth less because someone told you so," she'd say. "But I learned something. If God's love had a price tag, none of us could afford it, so he gave it to us free." The women would nod, some smiling through tears. And in those moments, Naomi felt a strength she didn't know she had. Reverend Geneva took a liking to her quickly. One afternoon, as Naomi wiped down tables, the Reverend leaned against the doorway, arms crossed and eyes kind. "You move like someone who's learned to turn pain into purpose," she said. Naomi laughed softly. "Maybe I have." The Reverend smiled. "Then you keep doing it, child. God's got plans for women who don't quit." Naomi paused. "Even ones who've made mistakes. Especially those," the Reverend said with a grin. "He builds his best stories out of broken ones." The days moved on, slow and healing. Every morning Naomi cooked breakfast for 20, sometimes 30 women. She learned all their names, their favorite teas, and which ones preferred quiet company. Every night, after everyone had gone to bed, she sat in the small chapel near the back of the building. The chapel was simple: wooden pews, stained glass windows, and a single candle always burning near the cross. That candle fascinated her. It never seemed to go out. No matter how rough the day had been, the flame stayed steady. Sometimes she sat there with her journal open on her lap, writing little prayers or poems. Sometimes she just whispered, "Thank you," into the stillness. She didn't pray for her mother as often now. The hurt was still too deep. But she prayed for him, Matthew Holt, every night. She prayed he was finding peace, the kind that didn't depend on guilt or saving anyone. One rainy afternoon, while she was sorting boxes of canned goods in the pantry, she overheard two volunteers talking near the hallway. "Did you see the news?" One whispered. "About that billionaire, the one from that scandal?" "Yeah," the other replied. "Turns out the whole thing was fake. Some assistant leaked proof that he never used the foundation money. Said the woman wasn't a mistress at all, just someone he helped. They're saying he stepped down from the company anyway, donated almost everything to charity." Naomi froze, a can of soup still in her hand. Her heart stuttered. She didn't move until the women's voices faded down the hall. Then she sank to her knees, her chest rising and falling fast. He had given it all away. Everything. A tear slipped down her cheek before she could stop it. She pressed her palms together, whispering through trembling lips, "Thank you, Lord. Take care of him." That night, she wrote in her journal, "Sometimes love doesn't chase after you. It releases you, because real love trusts God to finish what it started." She closed the notebook, holding it to her chest as though it were a heartbeat she could steady with faith. Weeks turned into a month. The air grew cooler as summer gave way to early fall. Naomi had grown stronger, her cheeks rounder, her laughter freer. She had become one of the shelter's pillars. When new women came in crying, it was Naomi who met them first, her voice soft and sure. "You're safe now. We don't ask where you came from. We only care where you're going." One day, Reverend Geneva called her into the small office beside the chapel. "We need someone to lead the poetry class this Friday," she said. Naomi blinked. "Me? I'm not a teacher." The Reverend smiled knowingly. "No, but you're a storyteller, and stories heal more than instructions ever could." So Friday evening, Naomi stood before a group of 15 women in folding chairs. She held her notebook in one hand and her breath in the other. "I used to think my voice didn't matter," she said, "but God kept giving it back every time I lost it. So here's something I wrote a while ago, when I didn't know if I'd make it." Her voice trembled at first, then steadied as she read. "We are the ones God refused to throw away, the ones he mended when the world said, 'broken.' We rise not because it's easy, but because love still calls our name." When she finished, the room was silent. Then one woman began clapping. Another followed. Soon the small chapel filled with applause and soft cries. Naomi laughed through her tears. "Thank you," she said, pressing a hand to her heart. "That's the sound of healing." After that night, the poetry sessions became a weekly thing. Women who had never spoken about their pain began writing it down, one line at a time. Naomi helped them find their voices again. It was messy, beautiful, holy work. One bright morning, she arrived at the shelter to find construction trucks parked out front. Workers were hammering and painting, and a crowd had gathered near the courtyard. "What's going on?" Naomi asked a volunteer. "New building," the woman said. "Some donor paid for an expansion." Naomi's eyebrows lifted. "Really? Who?" "No one knows. Anonymous," the woman said with a shrug. "But whoever it was, he gave a lot. Enough to fund 3 new programs." Naomi's heart skipped. She stepped outside and shaded her eyes. A large plaque had just been delivered, covered by a white cloth. One of the workers grinned at her. "You might want to see this," he said, tugging the cloth free. Naomi gasped. The engraving gleamed in the sunlight. The Naomi Carter Center for Women's Renewal. Her knees wobbled. She pressed a hand over her mouth. No, this can't be real. Reverend Geneva came up beside her, smiling so wide her cheeks glowed. "Oh, it's real, honey. That donor, he came by early this morning. Paid in full, said you'd understand when you saw it." Naomi's eyes filled with tears. "He came here?" Geneva nodded. Didn't give his name, but he looked like a man finally at peace. Walked right into the chapel, sat there a while, then left. I asked him who the gift was from, and he said, "From Grace." Naomi turned away, tears streaming freely. "Matthew," she whispered. That Sunday, the shelter held its weekly service in the chapel. The air was thick with the smell of candle wax and hope. Naomi sat near the back, head bowed, singing softly with the choir. Halfway through the final hymn, the doors creaked open. Every head turned. He stood there, hat in hand, wearing a simple white shirt and dark slacks. He looked different, lighter somehow, the sharp lines of his face softened by peace. Naomi's breath caught in her throat. The hymn faded as he walked slowly down the aisle towards her. She couldn't move. When he reached her row, he stopped, smiling gently. "You keep finding ways to surprise me," she whispered. He laughed softly, voice rough. "You keep giving me reasons to live." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded paper. "The deed," he said quietly. "It's yours. The center. Everything in your name." Naomi stared, hands trembling. "You can't." "I can," he said, pressing it into her hand. "You gave it life. I just gave it walls." Reverend Geneva stood nearby, eyes glistening. "Well, if this ain't a miracle, I don't know what is." The congregation clapped softly, some crying, others smiling wide. Naomi looked around, her vision blurred with tears. She turned back to him. "You didn't have to do this." He smiled, eyes wet. "You were never a debt to repay. You were a prayer answered." Naomi covered her face with her hands, laughing and sobbing all at once. The whole chapel erupted in gentle applause, voices murmuring, "Praise God." He reached out and took her hand. Firm, sure, trembling only slightly. "The world called you a scandal," he said softly, "but I call you a miracle." Naomi looked into his eyes, her voice breaking. "I call you home." After the service, they stepped outside together. The new building shone in the afternoon light. Children played in the yard, and laughter rang through the air. They stopped in front of the plaque. Naomi traced the letters with her fingers. "It's so strange," she said, voice trembling. "Seeing my name here. I used to think it didn't belong anywhere good." He smiled gently. "It belongs here, always has." She turned to him, tears glistening. "What happens now?" He exhaled, looking out across the courtyard. "Now, we build something good out of what the world tried to destroy. Together?" she asked softly. He looked at her, a smile touching his eyes. "If you'll have me." Naomi laughed through her tears. "I never stopped." They stood there as the church bells rang for evening prayer, their hands still joined. Around them, the shelter buzzed with new beginnings, fresh paint, open doors, voices lifted in laughter. Naomi looked up at the sign again, sunlight gleaming off her name. And in that moment, she understood. She wasn't her mother's mistakes. She wasn't the cruel words of strangers. She wasn't something bought or borrowed. She was something reborn. As the wind brushed through her hair, Naomi whispered a final prayer. Thank you, Lord, for taking what was broken and calling it beautiful. He squeezed her hand gently. Amen, he said, and together they walked back inside the shelter, not as a debt repaid or a story rewritten, but as two hearts finally set free. Morning broke clear and gentle over Pine Street. The air smelled of rain and bread from the bakery down the block. The sun had just started its slow climb when Naomi stepped outside the shelter, coffee in hand, and looked up at the gleaming gold sign above the door. The Naomi Carter Center for Women's Renewal. The words shimmered softly in the light, the kind of light that didn't shout but whispered, "You made it through." Naomi breathed it in, her chest full and steady. It had been months since she had first walked through this neighborhood with nothing but a suitcase and a broken heart. Now she stood in front of a place that bore her name, not as a reminder of shame, but of second chances. Behind her, the sound of shoes on the sidewalk made her turn. He was there, Matthew Holt, hands tucked in his coat pockets, eyes crinkled against the sun. "You've been out here a while?" he said softly. Naomi smiled. "Just taking it in. I still can't believe it's real." "It's real," he said, "and you earned every letter of it." She shook her head gently. "No, Grace earned it. I just showed up." He laughed, a sound lighter than she'd heard before. That's the hardest part, showing up. They stood in silence for a while, watching the city stretch awake. Delivery trucks rumbled past. A bus hissed to a stop on the corner. Somewhere down the street, someone was singing, a voice rough and joyful. It all felt beautifully ordinary. Naomi took a sip of her coffee. "You know what I used to pray for?" she asked quietly. "Not riches, not a new start. Just one morning where I didn't wake up afraid. This is that morning." Matthew looked at her for a long time, his voice low when he finally spoke. "Then maybe that's what peace looks like, waking up and realizing the storm passed while you were sleeping." Inside, the building hummed with life. Volunteers bustled about, voices overlapping in cheerful chaos. The smell of fresh paint and soap mixed with that of simmering stew from the kitchen. Naomi led Matthew through the halls, her steps light and sure. "This room's for cooking classes," she said proudly, gesturing to the newly tiled kitchen. "We'll teach simple meals, healthy stuff, and how to make something out of almost nothing." He grinned. "I've seen you do that before." She laughed. "Yes, but this time no burnt bread." They moved on. "The next room's our job corner," she said. "We've got donated laptops, interview clothes, and even an old sewing machine someone fixed up. You'd be amazed how many women just need one good outfit and someone to believe in them." He nodded. "Sometimes that's all it takes." At the end of the hall, she opened the chapel doors. The stained glass bathed the room in blue and gold light. A single candle flickered on the altar. Naomi's voice softened. "This is my favorite place. It's where I pray before the day starts, where I remember why we're doing this." He stepped closer, the light spilling over both of them. "You built more than a shelter, Naomi. You built a home for lost hearts." She smiled faintly. "That's funny. You said the same thing about me once. Because it's still true." By noon, the center was full. Women crowded the dining area, the sound of laughter and clinking spoons echoing through the halls. Some were young, some old, some with children, some alone. But all of them belonged. Gloria, one of the first residents, came up to Naomi with tears in her eyes. "You did this," she said, her voice trembling. "You made us feel human again." Naomi hugged her tight. "No, we did this. Together." From across the room, Matthew carried trays of bread to the tables, sleeves rolled up, tie long forgotten. Naomi caught him smiling as he passed out plates, listening to stories and jokes. For a man who had once lived surrounded by marble and silence, he fit here in this noisy room of survivors like he had been born for it. Reverend Geneva walked up beside Naomi, her silver curls shining under the lights. "Look at that man," she said. "You helped him find his purpose too." Naomi smiled. "We found it in each other." The Reverend patted her shoulder. "That's the secret, child. God doesn't always fix people apart. Sometimes he fixes them together." Later that afternoon, Naomi sat at the reception desk sorting mail when the front door creaked open. She looked up and froze. Her mother stood in the doorway. Laverne Carter looked smaller than Naomi remembered, her beauty worn thin. Her lipstick was faded, her blouse wrinkled, but her eyes were clear. "Baby," she whispered. Naomi's breath hitched. "Mama." The room went still. Reverend Geneva caught sight of them and quietly ushered the volunteers into another room, leaving them alone. Laverne stepped forward slowly. "I came to say I'm sorry," she said, voice trembling. "I know it's late. I know I don't deserve to be forgiven, but I need to say it." Naomi's heart beat hard. "Sorry for what?" "For all of it," Laverne said. "For the things I said, for what I did, for letting my fear make me cruel. I thought selling you would save me. Instead, it damned me. I've been sober 60 days now. The church lets me scrub floors and serve coffee. I'm trying to start again." Naomi stared at her for a long time. The anger she'd carried for years rose like smoke, then drifted away, leaving only sorrow behind. "What do you want from me?" she asked quietly. "Nothing," Laverne said quickly. "I just want to help. Maybe volunteer here, clean rooms, pass out food. I can't change the past, but I can be useful." Naomi folded her hands. "You can't work for forgiveness, Mama. It's not wages." "I know," her mother said, voice breaking. "But I can work from forgiveness if you'll let me." Naomi looked at her long and hard, then nodded slowly. "Tuesday mornings, 8 o'clock sharp. You'll sign in with Eleanor. No drinking, no stories, no pity. You follow the rules like everyone else. That's how we start." Tears streamed down Laverne's face. "Thank you." Naomi's voice softened. "Don't thank me. Thank Grace. It finally caught up with us." From behind, Matthew's quiet voice carried across the room. "That's the kind of grace that changes the world." Naomi turned to him, eyes shining. "No, it's the kind that changes people." That evening, the center held its first dedication ceremony. The little chapel filled with staff, volunteers, and residents. Candles flickered along the windowsills. The air buzzed with warmth and laughter. Reverend Geneva stood at the front, her voice rich and steady. "Tonight," she said, "we thank God not for perfection, but for persistence, for hearts that keep beating when they've been broken." Naomi took the podium next, hands trembling slightly as she looked out over the faces. Women she'd cooked for, prayed with, cried beside. "When I came here," she began, "I thought I was running from my past, but I learned that you can't heal by hiding. Healing means standing in the light, even when it shows your scars." She opened her notebook and read, "We are not what was lost. We are what was found again. We are proof that love can outlive the fire, that mercy still has breath." The room fell silent. Then applause broke out, rising like a wave. Some stood, some wept, some prayed aloud. Laverne sat in the back row, hands clasped tight, tears streaming freely. When Naomi met her eyes, she smiled. It wasn't a full reconciliation yet, but it was a beginning. After the service, Naomi and Matthew stepped outside. The city glowed beneath a purple twilight sky. The sign above the doorway shone in the lamplight. her name glowing like a crown she hadn't asked for, but finally knew she could. Where? Naomi traced the letters gently with her fingertips. I used to think my name didn't belong anywhere good, she said. Now it's on something that helps people live. He nodded. That's what redemption looks like. Not a clean slate, just a better story written over the old one. She turned to him, eyes soft. So what happens now? Now, he said, smiling. We build something good out of everything the world tried to break. Together, if you'll have me, he said quietly. Naomi laughed through her tears. I never stopped. He reached for her hand. His fingers brushed the silver bracelet on her wrist, the one that once belonged to Clara. She'd be proud of you, he said. Naomi smiled gently. I think she'd be proud of you too. Later that night, when everyone had gone home, Naomi walked alone through the quiet center. The halls were dim, but peaceful. She passed the kitchen, clean counters gleaming, pots drying neatly on racks. She passed the job room, where a stack of neatly folded shirts waited for tomorrow's new arrivals. Every corner felt full of life, of new beginnings breathing softly in the dark. She stopped at the chapel doorway. The single candle still burned on the altar, its flame steady and sure. Thank you, Lord, she whispered, for taking what was broken and calling it beautiful. Behind her, Matthew appeared in the doorway, his voice low. Ready to go? She turned, smiling softly. Almost. Before leaving, she glanced one last time at the wall near the front, where the center's motto was painted in bold, hopeful letters. You are not what was sold. You are what survived. She ran her fingers along the words. That's the truth, she murmured. But it's not the end. We don't just survive, we rise. He reached out his hand. Come on, Director Carter. She took his hand, and together they walked out into the night. The air was cool and sweet. The city around them hummed, full of ordinary miracles, distant laughter, the rustle of trees, the smell of fresh bread. Naomi tilted her head back, looking up at the glowing windows of the center. The candlelight flickered from the chapel window, a soft, unwavering beacon. Home, she whispered. Home, he echoed, his arm wrapping gently around her shoulders. They began walking down the quiet street, their steps slow and steady, their shadows long behind them. Neither spoke for a while. They didn't need to. The world for once had gone still enough to listen. And above them, through the chapel window, the candle flame burned on, small, bright and sure, as if heaven itself had leaned close to watch two souls who had finally learned the simplest, hardest truth. Grace is not earned, it's given. And once given, it never leaves. If this story made you pause, reflect, or even smile, don't forget to subscribe. I post daily and the next story might be exactly what you need to hear.